All right, everybody, what is going on? Good afternoon. Kind of a chill Friday, not a ton going on. We've already gone through the injury report for the Seahawks and Colts. We already know what's going on there. So we're just kind of waiting for a game to be played. So now's a good time for me to wrap up my look back at the college football season and talk about some of my top performers at various positions and try to just get a feel for who I think the Seahawks should be plugged into when we get to the draft in April. So I know that this is kind of like reading ahead a little bit. I know that that's not going to be everybody's style, but I want to go ahead and do the second half of this. So today we're going to do the defense. This first video is going to be all about nose tackles and then edge rushers. So basically the defensive line, and then we're going to move to the back seven in a second video, probably later today. So let's go ahead and get underway. Before we go any further into this video, I want to tell you a little bit about my friends over at Sleeper. Let me tell you, if you're not using Sleeper this year for daily fantasy football, you are missing out. Check out the left side of your screen right now. Look at all the great fun stuff you can pick on over there. All kinds of over-unders, pretty much any sport you can imagine. Obviously, we're big fans of football around here. Let's take a look at my entry for this week. I've got Jerry Jeudy going over 34 yards against the Bears. I got Derrick Henry scoring a touchdown against the Bengals. I've got Pat Mahomes going under 241 passing yards against the Chargers. And I have Jason Myers kicking at least 2 field goals against the Colts. So get on over to Sleeper. You can put together an entry just like this. And if you use promo code SBN, you can get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Check them out and test your football knowledge. All right, so nose tackle, it's actually a pretty good class. I know that there's going to be an instinctive belief with a lot of Seahawks fans, and justifiably so, that this team will not and should not target a nose tackle because we found a way to have a very dominant defensive line that is also very good against the run without having a true nose tackle. But this is still an area I could see the team adding on in. Remember, there was an anticipation this team was going to get Jonathan Hankins at some point, who is a pure nose, and he just never got healthy. And I do think that having somebody in that Jonathan Hankins mold, but hopefully better, would be valuable to this team. So let's go through some options here. Again, I want to stress, this is a strong nose tackle class, so you want to be in on this if you're ever going to be in on this. Going to start with the top dog right now, Caden McDonald. Caden McDonald has emerged as the premier nose tackle in this draft. I've seen some people say he will go in the first round. He's got a shot. If anything, he's almost too good, right? Because he is so effective that it kind of feels like it's more than just a nose tackle that you're getting with Caden McDonald. But I do feel like he's pretty firmly a nose. 57 tackles with 8 for a loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 10 pressures. So you are talking about more of a playmaker than a typical nose. Maybe when he gets to the pros, he'll kind of be able to do both ways, where he's a nose and a 3-tech. But I do get the sense that this guy's got a real chance to be a legitimate NFL nose tackle. Ohio State, excellent against the run this year, by the way, 84.5 yards per game. Not even 1,100 yards allowed on the season, and they played the what is it, the Big 10 or the Big 12 championship game? Whatever they call it now, I've lost track. 89.2 PFF grade. So if there's any nose tackle in this class that will go in the first, it is Caden McDonald. Next up, we got Christian Miller. Maybe he's a nose tackle, maybe not. Some people think he's a 3-tech. Make your own conclusions, but Georgia, 20 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack and a half, 18 pressures, very good for a nose. And Georgia was excellent against the run this year. Barely more than 1,000 yards rushing, less than 80 yards per game, and he's a big part of that. And he is playing a decent number of his snaps in the A-gap. I'm not convinced that he'll be able to hold up super well in the pros, but I think that there's at least a conversation to be had here. He's probably a day 2 pick, 81.7 PFF grade. He's going to be a valuable commodity this offseason. Darrell Jackson Jr., a guy who I kind of wasn't paying attention to all year because I didn't know he was a nose tackle, but as I looked into it, pretty clearly a nose. Florida State. Florida State obviously not on the same plane of existence as these other teams that we've already let off with, but Darrell Jackson was very good for them. 45 tackles, 3 for a loss, a sack, and 13 pressures. So some decent amount of pass rush, I guess. You did run the ball a little more successfully on Florida State. They allowed nearly 140 yards on the ground per game, but not terrible either. 74.6. The issue with him is that he's not as good of a tackler as some of these guys, but a lot of that came from one really bad game. So I think that is going to be overstated. I don't know if it's an intrinsic problem with him. Feels more like variance, random variance in a small sample size, but he's probably a top 100 pick as well, if I had to guess. And then you've got Tim Keenan III, who missed a decent chunk of time. Alabama nose tackle, did not play as much as you would have liked this year, but he remains one of the better nose tackle prospects in this draft, so I'm still going to talk about him. I know it's kind of defeating the purpose of this series if I talk about a guy who played like a little more than half the season when we're trying to talk about the guys who played the best in 2025, but nose tackle is not a super abundant position even in the best of times. So 13 tackles, 3 for loss, 2 sacks, knocked down a pass, forced a fumble, 9 pressures. So not a big presence as a pass rusher, but he takes up space in the middle for that Alabama defense. Alabama had a pretty good run defense this year. Just over 125 rushing yards per game allowed, 1,633 total. And that those numbers probably would have been better if Keenan didn't miss part of the year. That's another element at play here. 73.4 PFF grade. And final guy, and this guy's interesting mostly because he is the purest nose tackle imaginable. He doesn't really do much of anything else. Like, you look at his PFF page, pretty much every snap he plays is an A-gap. So the other guys, it's a little less clear sometimes. I could definitely understand looking at some of those guys and saying that's more of a 3-tech. Dante Corleone is not a 3-tech. He is a 1-tech or a 0-tech. He's a nose. So 13 tackles for him, 7 pressures. So statistically very muted, right? Like in terms of him actually making plays, there's not a lot. And Cincinnati, oddly enough, got run all over this season. They got demolished on the ground. Almost 175 rushing yards per game, over 2,000 rushing yards. Nevertheless, Corleone, generally regarded as somebody doing his job, 71.4 PFF. And again, there's a little bit of a give and take here because Dante Corleone is the purest nose tackle in this draft. And if you're looking for a pure nose, that's going to carry more value for you. All right, that's nose tackle. Let's get to edge rusher now. It's a fun edge rusher class. Not one of the best, but a pretty good one. And we got some really good performers this year. So let's blow through it. Probably the top performer this year. Not the number one edge rusher in this class, but I would say the guy that boosted his stock the most, David Bailey of Texas Tech. 43 tackles, 17.5 for loss, 13.5 sacks included there. So I don't think he led college football in sacks, but among players that we can seriously talk about as future pro prospects, especially in this draft, he was the king. 13.5. 3 forced fumbles, 1 pass defensed, 74 pressures, which led the entire league, and 6 penalties. So really good numbers. Penalties are a little bit high, but that's not even that's 1 every 2 games. And he's young, right? He'll get better. So he gives you everything else you could want. Dominant stuff. Really good run defense grade, 79, 93 grade overall. So he's bringing it all to the table. He will be a first-round pick. He will probably be gone in the top 20. Nobody's done themselves more favors than David Bailey. Number 2, we got Ruben Bain of the Miami Hurricanes. 37 tackles, 7.5 for loss, 4.5 sacks. And I know you're like, that's not that great. Where are all the sacks? How do you only have 4.5 sacks? Well, 58 pressures. Let's keep that in mind here. So there's a little bit of bad luck here. He's getting a ton of pressure, living in the backfield, like 5 pressures a game. I think he was second or third in the entire league, in the entire country. Also one forced fumble, also one interception, 4 penalties, elite run defense grade, 88.8. So he's considered to be an extremely well-rounded player. 93 PFF grade, so again, hyper elite. And I think you look at the sack numbers and you say there's probably a little bit of bad luck there. Although maybe he's just one of these guys that struggles to finish. But you are talking about a guy who lives in the backfield against pretty much anybody. Next up is going to be another TTU player, and that's going to be a little bit of a trend here. Romello Height. Romello Height of Texas Tech, the partner to David Bailey, and I know that that might feel like it reduces his value, because you are talking about a player that is benefiting tremendously from the fact that he plays across from Bailey. But 33 tackles, 10.5 sacks, or excuse me, 10.5 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, 1 pass defensed, forced 2 fumbles, 54 quarterback pressures, so right near the league lead. And keep in mind, you're in competition with David Bailey for those quarterback pressures. So the fact that he still had 9 sacks with David Bailey constantly beating him to the quarterback is incredible. Now, his run defense grade, not great. Again, PFF grades, I don't know how much we're going to read into them. Sometimes they just seem kind of random. I think the stats and metrics are more useful. 92.6 overall, though, so he's a phenomenal player. Probably a day 2 pick now, and definitely somebody I'm interested in if Seattle decides they want this kind of player. And the reason why I said get used to that as kind of a trend here is because the fourth guy we're going to talk about was also a teammate of a player we already talked about, Akeem Mesidor of the Miami Hurricanes, lining up across from Ruben Bain Jr. Actually had some better numbers this year. Mesidor, 46 tackles, including 12 for a loss, which also included your 7 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 44 pressures, so more sacks, more tackles for loss, more forced fumbles than Ruben Bain. Now, not the same number of pressures, 44. 44 is still very good, still constant pressure. But no penalties on Mesidor, by the way. Not a single penalty all year, which is hard to do. Elite run defense grade, 90.7, just like Bain. And elite overall PFF grade, just like Ruben Bain, 92.1. Hard to beat. So, look, Ruben Bain's going to be a top 5 pick. Mesidor might be a top 100 pick. I'm not saying that there's an equivalency here. But Mesidor did very well for himself. And I do think that he has a shot at being a top 100 pick at the least. There's a clear discrepancy between the two. Don't sleep on Mesidor. Gabe Yakas is going to be our final edge rusher we talk about in this video. Gabe Yakas of Illinois. We've talked about him a lot this year. Really good season for the Fighting Illini. 43 tackles, including 13.5 for a loss, so more than 1 tackle for loss per game. 11 sacks. Knocked down 1 pass. 3 forced fumbles. 42 pressures, so not quite up to the standard of some of the elite edge rushers, but he was very efficient with the pressures he got, and he was in the backfield a lot. Run defense grade, a little bit more mediocre, 65.2. Again, I don't know how much we want to try to scrutinize that. 79 PFF grade is not elite, but it is still very good. And if you can get him at the tail end of the 3rd round, or even maybe early in the 3rd round, you're doing great. So, yeah, that's going to be it for the edge rushers. It's good, man. It's not the best edge rusher class I've ever seen, but it is a good one. And I think that if Seattle does go into this upcoming draft in the state that they are, I think, likely to be in, absent a Max Crosby trade, then I think you need to try to get at least one of these guys on your team. All right. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. We're going to do the last couple positions later, and that'll do it for our look at college football in 2025 as it pertains to prospects. And then we're going to start distilling all this into like big boards and evaluations and eventually desired players. All right. Go Hawks. See you guys soon. Everyone have a good day.